I ran my first marathon last year. I also created this video right here about it. It got about 10 times as many views as I was expecting, and that's why this channel's a thing. Hey, if you're new here, my name's Eric. I'm a hobbyist runner from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and my goal is to run in the Boston Marathon. Back to that video for just 1 minute, some commenters noticed an inconsistency. A mystery, if you will. Why is the half marathon time so freaking slow? There is a very simple explanation here. This time here, it is not a half marathon race time. It is a personal best, but it was not me racing all out. This was set during a marathon training run.
What?
You see, the way Strava and Garmin show your best is like this. Even if these aren't races, they are still technically your PBs. But that just invites the open question, well, what would my half marathon PB be? PB and J? Let's find out. Okay, first things first, what's gonna be our goal time? Taking my recent 5K PB of 18:30 and putting that into the VDOT calculator, it gives me a time of 1:24:54, which, when I put that in there, I just kinda laughed. Oh wait. It's being 100% serious. Yeah, it was pretty intimidating because I know what that pace feels like, and I haven't even done that for a 10K PB attempt, so to ask me to do it for a half marathon? A little ambitious. But here's the thing. If I really do intend to go to Boston, backing down is really not gonna do me any favors. Now is the time to race to my limits. Now this half marathon is not the only race on my calendar for this year. The other is of course the Toronto Waterfront Marathon. The Mississauga Half is going to serve as a checkup race of sorts as I work my way to the marathon in October. It's going to give me a really good chance to experiment with training, see what nutrition works, and of course to see what kind of speed I can pull out in a race day scenario. And speaking of training, well, what is the training? Alright, so with training, there were a few high-level goals. The first of which was to extend my mileage. The second was to integrate workouts in my long runs. And the third was to... oh yeah, strength work. For mileage, I was looking at ramping up from 85 kilometers a week to about 115, and maybe peaking at about 125. The reason for that is, well, unfortunately, I was not born talented and I didn't run track in elementary school, middle school, high school, or even college for that matter. So yeah, my work rate has to be a little bit higher to get things done. The point of doing a workout in the back half of a long run is to get yourself used to running fast on tired legs. So I would warm up with 22 kilometers along slow distance before ramping up the pace. I believe I did 4:30 per kilometer for 2 kilometers, and then 4:20 for 2, 4:10 for 2, then 4 minutes, which was about the target half marathon pace for 1, and then I accelerated past that for the last one at about 3:55. And let me tell you, that last 3:55 kinda hurt. The other session was a little more gentle. It was a timed interval session, so same warm-up, 22 kilometers long slow distance, and then 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off. The 3 minutes on was at about half marathon pace, and the 2 minutes was about my easy run pace. I think the really great thing about these sessions wasn't just the physical benefits, it was the mental side. Because, you know, when you're out there on race day, you can always find another gear. You know, there's people cheering, there's runners around you. You want to get that medal. But when you're out there alone, you know, in the cold Canadian winter, no one's holding you accountable except for you. And, you know, that thought of, I can just go home and be warm right now, or I can just stop the treadmill right now and no one will know. That's really tempting. And the third goal was to increase the amount of strength training I was doing. Unfortunately, my hip flexors are weak. It's a result of sitting around all day editing, which can't really be helped. And as a result, my IT bands will get really irritated if I try to increase intensity or mileage. And yeah, I was doing both, so you can imagine. Started to hurt a bit. And the fix for this was a bunch of single leg exercises that were very, very boring to do, but very necessary. I don't want to bore you guys too much, but if you want to see what my exact training setup was, here it is. feel free to pause and have a look. You might have noticed by now, this video is coming out in July and the race was in April, so how did it go? Leading into the race for the taper, it was a very gradual cut down, and this was to get around something I'd learned in last year's marathon. For that marathon, I think I over-tapered, and I'll talk more about it later on in another video, but yeah, that was an objective this time, to have that kind of snap and pop still in my legs for race day. Going back to April 12th, the beginning of the taper, you'll see it was not all that much different from what I was doing in the previous week, and that was the theme. Just make sure you keep the intensity, just bringing down that easy mileage so you can rest up more, but you need to remember what it feels like to run fast. As for a carb load, I did 2 days with 8.5 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of my body weight. This is a log of what I ate for the actual carb load before the race. Nothing special in here, just try to avoid a lot of fiber because, obviously you don't want to have the runs when you're trying to run. And then there is the matter of the shakeout runs. So I think the day before, there were 40-kilometer winds with 60-kilometer-per-hour gusts. And the entire time I was mentally freaking out. I'm just like, oh my god, what if it's like this on race day? I'm probably gonna miss my target. Will I even be able to run 1:30? And for those couple of Ks I did at race pace, my god, it was actually really hard, but I think it was important to do that because I needed to come to grips with this is how hard it's gonna be. Get ready. The race day breakfast was 2 peanut butter and jelly bagels with about 380 milliliters of black coffee. I would also pop a 30-gram Precision Fuel and Hydration gel about 15 minutes from the race start. Warm up was about 2.5 kilometers around the parking lot with a few 100-meter strides thrown in just to get rid of that nervous energy and to prime my legs for the race to come. Weather was actually really good. The wind was still there. It was about 17 kilometers per hour from the northwest. Not ideal, but also not bad. And it was 5 degrees Celsius, which was pretty ideal in terms of temperature. Humidity was about 60%, so right around my ideal. And then it was time to head off to the corrals. Now, there was one critical moment there. I noticed the tongue of my right shoe was annoying me just a little bit, so I kind of just scooched it off to the side, thought nothing of it. That would come back to bite me. Then, 7:30, the race started. Now, for whatever reason, Mississauga keeps the marathoners and half marathoners all together. You can probably guess the problem with this. For the first 3 or 4 kilometers, I'm bobbing and weaving through people that are running at a marathon pace, not a half marathon. Might have been a blessing in disguise though, because it did prevent me from going out too hot. In fact, I believe for the first split, I was about a second behind pace. The second, I was about 5 seconds behind pace, and I would make that up on the third. And the fourth and fifth were bang on. This first section of the race is in Mississauga's downtown, so we were partially shielded from the wind, but not completely. And by the time the 4th kilometer hit, this is where the race changed. So now we were running downhill on Bernanthrope Road. We were running downhill, but at the same time, that was the direction the wind was coming from. It wasn't dead on, but at the same time, it was still kind of hitting me on the front right side. Would I like to have a tailwind with downhill? Yes. But this is the second best thing, because I know when we run back up this hill, having this sort of tailwind is gonna feel a lot better. And it was here I decided to pop the 100 milligram caffeine gel I packed. And I gotta say, because of the extra caffeine, this gel really mentally locked me in. I'm 5'7", 170 centimeters, not tall at all. But that gives me one key advantage here. I get to hide behind tall people and use them as windscreens. For this section of the race, I get behind a group of people, just draft off of them for a bit, take it a little bit easier before breaking out and going at pace again. And speaking of pace, I did run into a little bit of trouble here. I was going really fast. I would look down my watch periodically and see stuff like 3:43 or 3:46, stuff that's between 15 to 10K race pace, which of course, I could not sustain for the entire race. And I'm glad I was vigilant because when we got to UTM, there were a couple of up and down hills, which kind of clued me in hey, you need to be careful. Don't do anything crazy, just try to hit the pace, don't go above it. And it was also here, just before the 9K mark, I decided I would make my one and only stop. I grabbed some sports drink and promptly spilled a lot of it all over my front. And after leaving UTM, it was time for the turnaround point. So if you don't know, the Mississauga Half is a there and back again type of race, so you run down, you run back up. And this is where the race got hellish. I planned around 4 key hills for this race. I gave them nicknames. The first hill was named Bubba Hill.
That's my purse! I don't know you!
Now, Bubba Hill was meant to be 2.7% grade for 700 meters. No, it was actually 4.6% grade for 600, which is steeper. Okay, but that's a fluke. Someone just entered in the wrong number. They can't all be wrong, right? Well, at the 14K mark, we came up on Peggy Hill.
I hope you brought your appetites. We are having spaghetti and meatballs.
Now, Peggy was meant to be 2.6% for 1.27K. Well, she was, but not really. She turned out to be 1.5% over 2.5 kilometers, which is less steep, but we are running right into the wind now. And man, I gotta say, it really messed with me. And that's when it went from bad to worse, because remember that right shoe thing that happened in the corral? Well, yeah, turns out it loosened my shoelace enough to the point where it came fully untied. I was not happy about that, and for anyone watching that might have been there that day, I am so sorry you had to hear me swear so viciously, but yeah, your man was going through it. I have to pull over the side, retie my shoes, and with that solved, I had another problem on my hands. Literally. The fleece gloves I chose to wear that day were really heating me up, and I put them in my pockets and that was getting super toasty. So at about the 16-kilometer aid station, I just decided okay, there's garbage, throw them out. Even with that, I was still working really hard, and the runner beside me heard, and he yelled some words of encouragement. I don't remember what he said, I yelled something back. I don't remember what I said, but yeah, it was a moment out there, and we were in this windy, hilly hell called the Electrolit Half Marathon, and by God, we were gonna finish it. And on that motivational note, that's when the third hill hit. Cotton Hill.
I'm Cotton Hill. I killed 50 men.
Like the man himself, it was meant to be short and very unpleasant. I'm talking about 12.67% grade for 100 meters. Not unmanageable, but don't throw the race here, is what I would have said to myself if I didn't realize, yeah, no, it's 6.7% for 400 meters, which is less steep, but 400 meters? That's a distance. But the good thing is, you don't have a lot of time to dwell on it because the fourth and final hill comes right after. Hank Hill.
I work in propane and propane accessories.
A relatively mild 1.8% grade for 1.4 kilometers. And fortunately or unfortunately, the data was bang on for this one. And this is where the race really tested me. I think because my rhythm was thrown off with that whole shoelace thing, I was now dealing with a side stitch. I don't know about anyone else, but for me, I know the way to fix a side stitch is to slow down and breathe in through the nose and out through the mouth for a bit. Now the fix did help, but it didn't resolve the stitch fully. It was still there and it was still hurting just a little bit. But still, it was good enough to get to the 19K mark. This is where the ground leveled out, and because there were so many condo towers, we got a lot of shade, which felt real good. And then I rounded the final corner and I saw the clock. It said 1:25 something. The clock is for the gun time, of course. So I put everything I had left in the tank into that last 100 meters. And little did I know, that was the difference maker. Of course, you don't get your chip time right then and there. All I know is I ran 1:25 something. Maybe. There were some post-run pleasantries with some runners that finished around the same time I did, and there's a real sense of community and connection there because no one knows the course that you ran better than your fellow runners. Now, being an introvert, I just really didn't want to hang out there for too long, plus my legs were really tired, so I just kind of grabbed the medal. Oh, that went horribly wrong. Grabbed the medal and made my way back to the car. Then I looked up the results. The result was 1:24.56 on the chip time. My jaw kind of dropped because that was pretty much the time the VDOT calculator spit out. Honestly, I am over the freaking moon with that result. It is fantastic. And as a bonus, I finished in 21st place. Could have had 20, but 21 is still really damn good. Or if we're doing percentiles, that's 0.1% of runners, so pretty happy with that. But still, one question looms large, and that is, can I extend this speed out to a full marathon and qualify for Boston?